It's past 7, and Universities Minister David Willetts was in Cambridge last night talking about plans to raise the cost of tuition fees. Yesterday we heard how almost 700 dons from Cambridge and Oxford universities had signed a letter to voice their concerns about changes in the system of tuition fees. Well, Dr Jason Scott Warren, who's a fellow of Gonville and Caius College in Cambridge, is one of the dons who signed the letter.
I think the reasons that so many people have signed up to this letter is that we feel we're being forced to move at breakneck speed towards a kind of market system or a privatisation of higher education. And we don't really know how that system is going to work out. We don't know what's going to change in the future. We don't know who's going to choose to go to university, what they're going to choose to study, what expectations they're going to have of university life. We don't know what kind of rules there are going to be for the universities themselves. We don't know what they're going to be allowed to charge. We don't know what conditions will apply. It's all being kind of made up on the back of an envelope at the moment.
Well, if you look at the front pages of the newspapers, you'll see that David Willetts was met with abuse from anti-cuts protesters at this meeting. One resident who was there in attendance is Richard Taylor. We can speak to him this morning. Hello to you, Richard.
Hello, good morning, Jeremy.
Because in fact he wasn't there to talk about cuts, was he? He was there to talk about science and technology policy, is that right?
Yeah, so that's certainly what he started on, but he spent a good part of the presentation talking about tuition fees, and almost all of the questions he was asked by people who were there were on tuition fees. So tuition fees was definitely one of the main focuses of the evening.
Okay, and how sort of unpleasant did the scene become then at this meeting?
Well, inside it was absolutely fine. We could just hear the protesters outside. They didn't actually disrupt what was going on. They didn't stop the event from going ahead. However, there's only about 100 or so people in the lecture theatre, which holds 450. And I think one thing that the protesters had done is they tried to get all the tickets to the event, or a lot of tickets to the event, and then they didn't turn up. So they managed to disrupt it in that way.
And did you see any of these scenes outside then when he left the meeting?
Oh yeah, so both as I went in and when I left, there were protesters. They were chanting the same things and in fact they were the same protesters as who were at the Guildhall and Shire Hall protesting against the cuts there, and they were chanting no ifs, no buts, no public sector cuts. The only slight difference this time, a lot more of them seemed to have instruments and drums, so that they were making a bit more noise last night than they had been previously.
All right, and what was the reception like within the meeting from what Willetts was saying?
Well, Willetts' main line was, but he was coming across a bit like a dodgy sofa salesman. He was asking people to not think about the quantity of student debt, but just to focus on the low repayments. So, and he was insisting that others, like mortgage lenders, would also do the same. They would, he claimed, discard the fact that people were in £20,000 plus debts and paying it off over a very long time, over 30 years, and they would just look at people's monthly outgoings. But I don't think he really managed to persuade any of those asking him questions on tuition fees that what he was doing was the right thing.
Okay, Richard, thank you for speaking to us this morning. Good to talk to you.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy.
Well, the best, Richard Taylor, who's a listener and a resident of Cambridge who attended this meeting where David Willetts was met with opposition by anti-cuts protesters outside the meeting hall. It's 16 minutes past 7.